All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, and welcome to the webinar tonight, and I hope everybody is doing well. And if you can hear me, just give me a quick, I can hear you. That would be great. And maybe just one or two of you there, so that would be outstanding. All right, great, excellent, thank you. All right, wonderful. Okay, let's get started tonight. We've got lots of great things to talk about. We've got training with a power meter. This is an introduction to the benefits of power training, and all that we're doing is we're going to talk a lot about what is the reason why that we're training with a power meter and how we're going to do that. And so we're going to go through the basics tonight. We're going to have more webinars coming in the future here that are going to allow you to go deeper into this. So if you've been training with a power meter for 2 or 3 years, a lot of these things will be a review. If you're new to training with a power meter, this will be a great way for you to continue to improve your knowledge, to continue to use this amazing tool and work with it. So my name is Hunter Allen. I'm the CEO and founder of the Peaks Coaching Group, also the co-author of Training and Racing with a Power Meter with Dr. Coggin. Our book is in first, second edition, and we are working on the third edition right now. So we're excited about looking forward to another new edition coming up, probably in 2015. Also have co-developed Training Peaks WKO Plus software as well in the past, and have been working with power tabs for many, many years. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but just want to let you know. Some little housekeeping work here. If you need to, here is that control panel here. You can get rid of that control panel right here. You can type your questions in right here. All questions are recorded. This session is being recorded, so if something comes up here that you'd like to read or see again, listen to again, you're going to be able to do that within minutes after it's finishing. So just so you know that that's it is. All right, so here's just a little bit more about me. I've been a level 1 cycling coach, for many years, and working with athletes all over the world. Worked with professional athletes at the pro tour level, Tour de France, best in the world mountain bikers. My athletes have won all kinds of events, from the local criterium on Tuesday night to world championship titles. I've spent a tremendous amount of time analyzing power files and looking at all this data just over and over and over. It makes a lot of tedious work at times, but at the same time, I really enjoy quantifying this information with the power meter. So it makes a huge difference. I also co-teach the USA Cycling Power Certification course, and I've been doing that since 2005. Andy Coggin and I taught that together, and now Dr. Stephen McGregor and I teach that together. I was the 2008 BMX team, Olympic team coach I was the technical coach for the BMX team. So we put power meters on BMX bikes. We learned a lot about BMX with power meters. It was really, really cool. Helped us get silver and bronze medal in 2008 Olympics. So I've done lots of varied things, and really still enjoy talking about training power. I've taught this all around the world: South Africa, South America, New Zealand, Canada, England, Netherlands, Norway, just about every English-speaking country there is, and most of the Spanish-speaking countries as well. So let's get started. We've got lots of things here to talk about tonight. Again, this is a great intro to training with a power meter, and it's going to give you some really good thoughts about this. So let's talk about, what is power training? Well, power training is really the use of a way to measure, a measuring device, essentially, that tells you how much work you have done. Okay, so that's truly what it is. It's just a measuring tool, and it is training with data. I mean, it is quantifying it. It's bringing that data in there, and that makes a big thing that you really want to do, and that's something that we all do is make that happen. It's just like a thermometer. And that's really when you consider it. You know, you can't measure what you don't, you can't improve what you don't measure. All right, so that's a key thing here. We have to be able to measure our power, measure our fitness, and then we can get to it from that perspective. So let's talk a little bit about how we got to this place. What is this evolution here in terms of power training and evolution of training with data? So first off, we start with RPE, rate of perceived exertion. This is good data. You know, it's still important. We still listen to what our body feels like every day, and understanding how that relationship works with your power output, your heart rate. That's important. But really, that's all we had at the beginning. You know, then we went to heart rate data. All right, that was even better data. Now we've got some information about how fast our heart is pumping. Okay, and that's a response. It's a response to work. All right, and now we have power, which is our best data, which is the actual dose to the response. Okay, so let's just think about strength training. How does this relate in strength training, right? So first, you know, RPE, good data. That's the caveman. He's just lifting, you know, the Viking there. He's lifting rocks over his head. You know, he's doing a little weight training. You know, he doesn't know exactly how much the weight is. Well, this is kind of heavy. This is kind of light. Then, okay, now we got a little bit better data. Now, oh wow, we got, you know, the guy with a rock and he's got a handle on it. Okay, well, no, a little bit more. Well, it's a pretty heavy rock, and I can do a little bit better with that, so getting better. And then we get to an exact weight. Okay, you go in there, and you know it's 45 pounds, 20.4 kilos, and bang, you can stick that one on each side of the barbell, bench press it, and you know exactly how much work you're doing, right? How many repetitions, how many sets, how much weight. So that's a key part of that in terms of thinking about how we get to this power training. What is power? So let's think about what those things are. First off, we have to know some key terms. We need to know what work is. Work is force times distance, okay? And power is work divided by time, okay? So power is work divided by time. Then we need to know how do we get wattage out of this, right? Well, watts are really torque times cadence, okay? So how hard you push on the pedal, all right, and which is torque, or torque is twisting, okay? So something that twists times cadence, right? And that's how fast you're pedaling. Or what we, you know, the scientists speak of it as angular velocity, torque times angular velocity. So really, watts are how hard you pedal multiplied by how fast you are pedaling. So you can create 1,000 watts by pushing a really big gear, let's say a 5312, and a really slow RPM, but mashing really, really hard, okay? Or you can do a 53, or let's say you can do your small chain ring, a 39, and you can do a 21 in the back. You can do 1,000 watts on that as well, and you pedal really, really fast, okay? So how you create the watts is something that we get to in a future webinar. But that's what we're looking at, is how hard you pedal multiplied by how fast you're pedaling. Well, why has this evolved? All right, so what's happened here? So power training measures per exact amount of work you do. Okay, so we measure work in joules, and so 1 watt is 1 watt per second is a joule. And then when we look at heart rate, it measures the response to the work that we do. Okay, so this is what we call the dose of training, and this is the response. That's really all that is. All right, power training here, it establishes a quantifiable baseline fitness. So you go out and you do a test. You know where your baseline threshold power is to start with. And, well, heart rate gives us a baseline heart rate. Okay, it doesn't tell us too much. It allows us, with power training, to create specific training zones. With heart rate, we have more general training zones. Heart rate's impacted by heat, by how much you slept last night, how much caffeine you've had, lots of different things that heart rate is impacted on. Now, power training also allows us to measure micro changes in fitness. It's very small changes that sometimes are really significant. I would argue that the Tour de France, typically the difference between first place and second place is probably about 10 watts, maybe 15, but it's a very, very small difference. So micro changes in fitness are really important to cyclists. Unfortunately, heart rate doesn't allow us to do that. It gives us the ability to measure large changes in fitness. Well, what also power training allows us to do is we retest, right? This is a nice cycle of testing, creating training zones, and then applying a progressive overload to that training, and then getting better from that. All right. Well, you never know really with heart rate, because you might see that your heart rate went down for a particular speed, but is because it was cooler today or it's hot the day you tested. And we don't really know. It could give you a little bit of confusion in terms of that progression. Okay, well, what do you need to get started? Well, you need a power meter. Okay, so there are lots of these power meters out here, and our fine folks at PowerTap is one of our sponsors tonight, and just to give you a little background on these guys, I actually got a PowerTap back in 1999. One of the very first power taps that was out. It was a old gray hub one, real dark one, real big monster thing. And I got one because one of my clients has asked me, said, "Hey, Hunter, would you train me with a power meter?" And I was like, "Oh, I guess so. I can try. I've never tried it before." And so what I did was I realized right away I had no idea what 300 watts meant. Was that good? Is it bad? What is that? So I decided, hey, you know what, if I'm going to train this guy, I need to go buy one of these myself. So I went out and got one of the old now, they were brand new then, the gray hubs, and started using it and training with it, and started downloading my data and downloading his data and looking at it. And very soon it was very obvious to us that we couldn't figure out what the data meant. So that's where we started to develop a piece of software, and we launched that software in 2003. We called it Cycling Peak Software. That came that company, Cycling Peaks, merged with a company called TrainingBible.com. Joe Friel had a company that was essentially an online training log, and then we became Training Peaks. So we married the science together with all of that. So that became Training Peaks Software. That's been, since 2004. I'm at 10 years ago now. So that's been a long time. We've been really going along a while and working hard on this. And one of the things that we've been doing recently is we're about to come out with version 4, WKO4. We now call Cycling Peaks. We call it WKO. WKO stands for workout. We're going to call it WKO4, so version 4. And we've got a lot of new science coming in. We've learned a lot of things over the years, and we are now in a place where we're going to be able to apply a lot of that new science that you're going to get to see in version 4. So look for that late spring this year, and we'll tell you more about that. It's as we go along here, we need to talk a little bit about the different power meters. Okay, so there's some power meters out there that are all kinds of different formats and different ways they are. The algorithm, the PowerTap PowerCal, that's based on a measurement of heart rate. It's low cost. Its accuracy does depend on setup, and the cost is right there, $75 to $500. All right, so algorithm ones, accelerometer-based ones. The iBike is one, handlebar mount. It's low cost, accuracy. The cons are it's a little complicated to get set up. Parts-based, where we actually measure strain on a part, or like a crank, for example. This is one of the ones. The Stages is like that. It's a crank-based strain gauge one. Accuracy is good, lower cost. Cons are that's new to the market. Wheel-based, of course, PowerTap. It's a wheel-based strain gauge. It's highly accurate. It's incredibly reliable. The cons are, well, it's not free, and it's a little more expensive than the other things. And you've got a wheel set, so now you're set with these wheels. Crank-based, Cork, SRM. So these are similar, right? These parts-based ones, They're all measuring strain on parts, okay, of the bicycle. Highly accurate, reliability, and then all of a sudden our cost goes up even higher. So, PowerTap. It's been tested for years and years and years and years. It's trusted by all of, the community is highly accurate, and it is true. Okay, one of the greatest things. Tell you one of the. It's interesting in being in this industry for so long now. It's very difficult to to sell a power meter a lot of times in a bike shop. So you go into the bike shop and you walk in and there's the guy there and he's like, oh, I want to get faster. Well, what do? They walk you over to the $3,000 set of wheels and say, oh, you should buy these wheels, they'll make you faster, right? Nobody ever really talks, about, hey, come over and buy this power meter. That'll make you really faster, because that's the thing that will make you really faster long term. You're gonna have to work, all right, but you're gonna get faster. Well, now what is really, really amazing is that you can walk into a bike shop and you can say, and the guy can say, buy these set of wheels. They're the fastest aero wheels that we have, plus they have a power meter in them. So PowerTap is the only power meter that actually makes you faster by just putting it on your bike, which I think is a really, really outstanding feature. These ND wheels, these things are sweet. They're my favorite wheels. I've been riding them for, I guess all last year, and then so far this year they are super fast. So great, great wheels. I ride them in training. I beat them up in the bad weather. I ride them in races. Wherever they are, those things are bomb-proof. So excellent, excellent wheels. So that's a little bit about our sponsor, PowerTap, and a great company. Good folks. I've known many people there in the company for over 10 years now, and they're just good folks. Benefits of power training. Well, let's talk a little bit about these things. First off, identifying your strengths and weaknesses or limiters, okay? Establishing clear training zones, okay? That's what we're going to figure out. Where do we train? Quantifying the training load, okay? Measuring changes in fitness through testing, okay? So we got to measure our changes in fitness. We test. Testing is training. Training is testing. Motivation helps us to motivate ourselves when we're training, right? Performance. And we get out and we actually go to an event, whether that's a Grand Fondo, whether that's a race, whether that's a century ride, whatever that is. We need to quantify the demands of the event itself. All right. So what is that effort? Okay. I had a client who did the Iron Horse this past year, and well, I've had clients who've done it many times. So I had power files from that event. And all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, no problem. I know exactly how to train this athlete for it. I can even show this client, here's the Iron Horse Classic Bicycle Race, and they know exactly how to pace them and all the category and all the criteria they need to be successful at that. In performance, we use a power meter for pacing as well, incredibly important pacing tool. We also use it for energy, or what we call calorie management. We get our nutrition correct. And then the understanding our performance, what happens afterwards, after the ride, we download our power, what happens during the race, our success and our failures. A lot of times, of course, we learn more from our failures than we do from our successes. So let's talk just a little bit about these things. So in training, identifying our strengths and limiters, it allows us to understand a very highly specific thing in our training plan and design a training load that allows us to increase the effectiveness of your training. Okay, so it's not just what the team needs or whatever; it's what you need, and that's a big thing. So, for example, what we call is a power profile. So, Dr. Coggin and I came up with this power profile because we wanted to understand how everybody fit within this. What we're, how good were you compared to the world's best? And so if you use our software, Training Peaks software, it shows you at the top the best in the world, and then those are our best numbers up here, and they're literally made by our world champions. So what happens is then you put your data in, and it comes up with a power profile. And so this might show you where strength is, okay, and what those strengths are. And in this case, this athlete's a 5-minute, his VO2 max is strength, and our 60-minute, or what we call functional threshold, is his strength. But these two things are his limiter, his 1 minute and his sprinting. So his power profile, we would say, is upward sloping to the right. Okay, so it's moving in this direction, and that tells you a lot about the things that you need to work on, and what we need to use as that we rely on in order to be successful. Okay, so those are definitely critical parts of that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to establish clear training zones. Power testing allows for these things. We have to figure that exactly, where we are. What are those training zones? And then once we know those training zones, the beauty is then we can train specifically for that energy system. So let's talk a little bit about our training levels. These are Dr. Coggin's power training levels, and each one has a purpose here. Active recovery, less than 55% of your threshold power, less than 68% of your threshold heart rate. Your rate of perceived exertion is about 2 on a scale of 1 to 10. And, you can do this for about 70 to 80 years. That's about how long all of us live. About 70, 80 years, you're in active recovery. So just remember that, on Sunday when you go out and you get your big, 2 or 3 hour ride in, and you're laying on the couch after a ride, taking a nap, and your spouse comes up and kicks you and says, "Get off the couch, you lazy bum." And you're like, "Honey, I'm training. I'm in level 1 right now." Right? So you have to remember that you're still training when you're in active recovery. Well, a little bit. Endurance, we're improving our endurance in level 2, 56 to 75% of our threshold power. We can do this for people who haven't ridden that long or that far. 2.5 hours is an endurance ride. For most of us probably on this call, we probably need to do 3, 4 hours or maybe more to really improve our endurance. You can go all the way to 14 days if you really want to. I don't recommend riding for 14 days to improve your endurance, but we've seen riders at RAM and in the military and eco challenges and stuff, they can do those. Tempo, the next one up. Our intensity now, you notice, is going up as we go up the scale here, 76 to 90%. Rate of perceived exertion 3 to 4. We're starting to do 2.5 hour tempo rides. We may be blocking it into 45 minutes or 30 minutes or 60-minute blocks, but you're really starting to push yourself. At the end of a tempo ride, you're tired, right? You're like, your back is like, "Oh man, that was a really hard ride." That's a tempo ride. Tempo rides are not easy. You got to stay on it. You're staying on the gas the whole time. So it's a tough thing. I've seen ultra elite endurance mountain bikers ride at tempo pace for over 7 hours. So 8 hours they can do it. It definitely makes a huge difference there. All right. When we get to this main one here, lactate threshold, this is what everything is based around. It is an hour, all right? So what we call functional threshold power is an hour at threshold, 60 minutes. We're training right at 100% for 60 minutes. But, we can train our threshold down to 10 minutes. So if we do a 10-minute interval and we have our power between, say, 100 and 105%, then we're still going to create enough stress on our system in order to get a benefit from that. Okay, so remember that. That's a key thing here. That's one of the beauties of this training with power idea, is that you need to do the time and the intensity. They're related. They're connected. I tell the story. I've told the story many times. I had one time I had a client, and he brought a buddy on a ride with us, and his buddy was asking me some questions. Said, "Hey, my coach has me doing 4-minute intervals at 100% of threshold. What do you think of that?" And I said, "Well, what's he trying to do?" He's like, "Oh, he's trying to improve my threshold power, my lactate threshold." And I said, "Well, the problem is, if you are trying to improve your threshold, you need to do a minimum of 10 minutes in order to create enough stress on the body for the body to adapt from and get stronger. So you have to do 10 minutes. And if you're riding at 100% and at 4 minutes, well, that's what VO2 max is, 3 to 8 minutes. So if you want to do 4 minutes, you really probably need to ride between 115 and 118% of FTP. So you've got to do, one or the other. So he ended up increasing the time that he was doing his intervals to get the threshold work in. And that's the beauty of this, right? If you want to do your VO2 max, be in this range, 106 to 120%, and do it at this time period, 3 to 8 minutes. Anaerobic capacity, now 121 to 150%. Our heart rate really doesn't apply here. These are short efforts. Neuromuscular power, these are maximal efforts, 5 to 15 seconds. That's all you got to know. If you want to improve your neuromuscular power, you've got to do sprints. 5 to 15 seconds as hard as you can go. It just doesn't relate to your threshold. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is once we've got our training zones dialed in, then we're going to quantify our training load. Okay, so we need to understand what we are doing, okay, because we need to understand how much we can handle. If we don't know, well, should we do 4 hours this week, or 8 hours, or 12 hours, or 16 hours, we don't really understand exactly how we're going to get to that place. Then we're tracking that training load, right? So we can track that training load, and we can understand what it means to us, and it gives us insight in terms of when to train and when to rest, when we might want to take a break. Well, this example that we love to use here, and this is an incredible tool that we've been using for years now in the Training Peaks WKO software called the Performance Manager Chart. And this tool tracks essentially your fitness, your fatigue, and your form. So this blue line here is what we call chronic training load, okay? The pink line is our acute training load. So you can see this athlete's weekend. And then the yellow here, this is our training stress balance. Okay, so if you notice here, I know these are hard to see and they're small, but if on the left side here, your training stress balance, these are positive numbers. And then this is the 0 line here, and this is negative numbers. So if we drew a line across here at 0, we can see when the yellow is above 0, that the athlete is fresher, okay? Now, that does not mean that they're on form, okay? It means that they're fresher, okay? It means that they have a chance to come on form and do well. You got to have a little bit of everything, right? So we got to have a nice combination of fitness, the chronic training load, not too much acute training load or fatigue, and then we got to have just the right amount of rest to create form. So definitely a key thing there to remind ourselves of. All right, that's a great tool that we've written a whole chapter on in our book, Training and Racing with a Power Meter, and many articles over the years. So let's talk a little bit about how to measure our changes in fitness. Okay, so through testing, through power training, this allows us to measure those micro changes I talked about. And ultimately, that's something that's really important here. We need to measure and identify the effectiveness of your training. Are they really improving? That's something that's absolutely critical here. To do. Are you really improving with your sprint? Are you really improving with your 1 minute power, your 30-second power, whatever that is? We need to make sure that we're really doing that. So we do test a lot. We test every 6 weeks generally, and because your fitness changes in 6 to 8 week blocks, and so it's really important for us to test on a regular basis. Because if you don't test on a regular basis, then you don't really know if you're improving. If you don't know if you're improving, you're not resetting your training zones, or you need to change something if you're not improving. So you just have to test. If you're training with a power meter, just plan on every 6 weeks doing our power profile test, and that makes a huge difference. Okay, motivation. Well, power training allows us to set quantifiable goals. Okay, if my functional threshold power is 250 watts, then I'm going to get to 270 watts by May. All right, so I'm going to set a goal. I'm going to focus on that goal, and I'm going to try and get there. So what am I going to do? Because that thing, that goal sets a lot of things in motion. How do I get there to really improve? Well, I'm going to start doing threshold intervals, back to our training zones, right? I need to be doing intervals of 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 60 minutes. 10 minutes, well, my threshold is 250. I can probably do a little bit higher than that, so I'll do 260, 270 maybe for 10 minutes. I'll do a bunch of these 10-minute intervals. Eventually, I'll start to adapt and get stronger. I'll do 20-minute intervals, right at 250, right at 255, right at 260, and then I'll start to get stronger and stronger and stronger from those. So that helps us to really keep motivated throughout all. Now, superior workout analysis. What does this mean? Well, we can dig deep into the data, right? We can see a second-by-second record of everything you have done on the bike. Right? And that's the beauty of this, right, is that you can see exactly what you did on the bike, and you can say, wow, well, I can improve. You know, I can get better from these things. You know, where was that sprint? Or did I start the sprint too early? Or did I start the sprint too late? Or where exactly was that place where I got dropped from the breakaway? You know, those things we can pinpoint and really start to define. Not only that can we pinpoint those things, but we can define, is our training being correctly executed? Am I doing the intervals they need to be done? Did I do too many intervals or not enough? So those are the things that that you can start to do. Especially if you have a coach, or if you're a coached athlete, or if you are a coach, then it gives an added sense of responsibility. It gives that accountability to the coach, to the athlete. Hey, did you get the work done? So here's an example. Here's one of my favorite riders, Jens Voigt. Jens was in a breakaway in the stage 10 of the Tour de France 2006. So, you know, you can see here in this power file here, he's in the very first hour. He did a tremendous amount of attacks. All these, this yellow lines, these are all attacks in the first hour. He did 442 watts average for that first hour, or this is stage 10, which was for him 4.7 watts per kilogram. Okay, so then he got in the breakaway. Once he was in the breakaway, things settled down. And then he started to go up this climb. This is the Col de Sudé, and he did 370 watts up this climb, 4.5 watts per kilogram. This was, you know, an hour-long climb. And then finally, you know, the last climb comes in here, the Col de Mary Blanc, and that's a key thing here that he attacked here at the bottom, tried to stay with the guys. But did end up getting dropped. You can see his power starting to drop off as he's now fatigued. You know, again, 10th stage, 4 hours and 20 minutes into the race. He did 343 watts, 4.2 watts per kilogram for him as he starts to really fatigue towards this point right down here. All right, so then he's just kind of cruising in, and that makes a big difference there in terms of he just, you know, got to finish tomorrow, got to get there, got to finish it. But we can see exactly all of these things throughout the training plan. All right, so what are we going to do now? We're going to quantify the demands of the event. Okay, what are the demands of the event? That's a key thing, because if you don't understand this, then we can't develop a specific protocol. So, for example, what about if you have a circuit race that's coming up, and you have a circuit race, and that circuit is a 5-mile circuit, and you're going to do 10 laps. All right, well, that's pretty simple, right? Now we know you're going to do 50 miles. Okay, so you got to at least be able to race 50 miles. All right, so that's the demand. Oh, well, on that 5-mile circuit, you have 3 hills. Each are a kilometer long. Okay, so 3 1-kilometer hills on that circuit. So that means now you're going to do 3 times 10. So you're going to do 30 1 kilometer hill repeats in that circuit. It's going to be a hard race, right? I mean, it's going to be a really hard race. You got a lot of efforts here you're going to have to do. So that means this is up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. You got to be able to do 31 kilometer repeats, right? So if you're going to do that, right, then all of a sudden it's like, wow, you know, I need to start focusing on doing these repeats in my circuit race, because now it's going to be a big, big effort for me. Should I even go to the race if I can't do that in training? Right? So you start to develop specific protocols for that. You start to develop specific training. All those things. Key thing there, defining the demands of the event. Absolutely critical. So one of those things that allows us to do that is the power profile. All right? So this gives us different types of riders, right? So here's a time trialist, you know, what we saw earlier, upward sloping to the right. That may be a thing that's perfect for them to see their time trialing. And then we also here we have a long course triathlete. Yeah, they don't really have a lot of sprinting or anaerobic capacity. They don't need it, right? I mean, they're doing long course triathlon. They need a lot of aerobic ability in 5-minute and functional threshold power. Then we have a sprinter. This is the opposite of our upward sloping to the right. Now we have downward sloping to the right. Incredible sprinting, right? Incredible 1-minute anaerobic ability. Not so great in the aerobic side, okay? So not so great there. But that defines how the athlete, where they can be successful, right? Super important. Next thing we have is we have an all-arounder, okay? Here's somebody who does pretty darn well in everything, right? They can do pretty well in their sprint. They can do pretty well in their time trial. They can do pretty well in their 5-minute, all those things. So they're doing pretty darn well all around. They can be successful in just about any race that they can get into. So keep that in mind when you've done your power profile. Now, an example here, how do we pace ourselves? You know, absolutely critical to performing well in a race is pacing. You know, I can give you an example of people who have paced themselves with their power meters in a criterium. People have paced themselves in a stage race, you know, the Tour de France, for example. You know, people have paced themselves in a hill climb time trial. People pace themselves every way in every race you can imagine using their power meter. So it's absolutely critical here to understand how that makes, how that works, you know, that's something that, yeah, makes a big deal. How do we do this? Well, let's give an example here. So one of the things that we've come up with is a thing called training stress score, and training stress score is a score in which you get every workout, you get a certain score for that workout based on your threshold power and how, excuse me, and how you were, hold on a second here. And this training stress score gives you a score based on how close you are to your threshold power for that entire ride. And if your maximum you can score in an hour is 100 points, okay? The maximum you can score in an hour is 100 points. We also came up with a thing that's called your intensity factor, and your intensity factor is ultimately the intensity of the effort in relationship to the threshold power. So at the top here, you have the intensity factor, and then you have the time. So what we look at here is, in the white, if you're a Ironman triathlete, this means you left too much on the table. You didn't go hard enough. If you scored you did a 5:30 and you scored a TSS of 247, your intensity factor is only 67%. You just didn't go hard enough. You didn't pace yourself right. On the opposite side here, we can say, well, gosh, if you are in the red zone here, you scored a 352 and you knocked out a 5:30 Ironman bike leg, you're at 80% of your threshold, and then you probably are likely blown. Try again next year. Okay, so that's something that we look at. We're trying to find this range in here where we're just under 300 TSS points for an Ironman, right in that range, 285 to 300 TSS for an Ironman. Allows us to pace ourselves correctly so that you know exactly where you want to be. So that's a key thing here that we're looking for in this. So we pace ourselves a lot. You want to learn more about Training Stress Score, we've got articles on trainingpeaks.com and also on Peaks Coaching Group site, along with our book, Training, Racing, and Power Meter. Next thing we're going to do here is we're going to do energy and caloric management. Absolutely critical in terms of how we fuel ourselves and stay focused for all of the whole ride. I once had a client that wanted to succeed in a century ride, and the previous year he bonked, and so we went and pre-rode the course and got all the landmarks for the course all dialed in, so that then what happened for him was it was, oh, you know, I knew, okay, we came back and we downloaded his power file, and I knew exactly what he could do between here and the first rest stop, all right, and then here and the next rest stop. And then, oh, you had this 45-minute climb. Well, you burned 800 calories going up this climb. So now you need to do this kind of an effort. And you need to eat this much food. Eat 3 gels here. You need to eat, make sure you get a drink here. You know, all of these things, you know, we had completely dialed in and had a written nutrition protocol for him for the day. And we had all of his food set up. Everything was really dialed in. And so it works. You know, this guy took 2 hours off his previous time. I mean, a major, major feat, and really, really kept it going. So those are the things that, you know, that we all work with and we can improve throughout our ride, our nutrition. Use your power meter for your nutrition. Understanding success and failure. Wow, you know, this is a critical one. You know, your data from a race is absolutely critical. Makes a huge, huge difference. It really, really does. So ultimately, the thing here is that when we fail, we learn the most, okay? When you got popped out of the breakaway, when you, you know, bonked, and you didn't have enough nutrition, you know, did your sprint start soon enough? You know, was your sprint, you know, high enough watts? All those things we start to learn. So it's a really, really important thing to do, to use your power meter in racing in order to understand how you succeeded or how you failed, and then take that back into your training and improve from that perspective. Again, improve communication with your coach. It's absolutely critical here because power training gives, you know, us, me, the coach, really understanding of what you did, you know, and how you work together. You know, did you do the assignment? Well, if you didn't, then you only did 80%. Why did you only do 80%? Where did you fail? You know, what are the things that I can do to make the training plan even better in order to for you to, one, maximize your time, right? Because that's a big part of this, is maximize those times that you train. You know, we're all time crunched. You know, we don't have that many, you know, hours to train. I wish we did. I wish we were all unlimited, but we don't. So, you know, we have to make sure that we're focused on the time that we have. And so that's what my job is. Let's make sure we do the right training for you. Absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. All right. Next thing here, let's look at, you know, coaching with training levels. Here's a prescription. You know, so here's an example of a workout that we might write for an athlete. This is a nice endurance ride with a little bit of tempo and zone 2 work. Here we're targeting, here's your warm-up. So we're targeting your endurance in the warm-up, 0 watts to 257 watts, 3 sets of 1-minute fast pedal intervals with a minute rest in between to open up your legs. Then we're working on endurance. So now we're going to ride endurance or flat to rolling terrain. Focus on staying relaxed on the bike, spinning circles, keep your cadence between 90 to 100. The first hour, I want you to complete a 45-minute tempo workout. All right? So not only in that endurance, you're going to do a little bit of tempo there, 258 to 308. Using a gear, which results in a cadence of 75 to 80 RPM, a little bit bigger gear, complete the effort. All right? So, I mean, those are the things that we're doing here is we're providing clear communication to our athletes, targets for each section or workout element for them, and the right system. Right? That's the beauty of having a power meter, is that now you know that you are in the right system. You're training the right system. That's an absolutely key, critical part of that. All right? So that's a good deal. All right? Really important. There they are. Those are those zones. That's what we want to look for. Now, the coach comes back and reviews them. We can look at our different training levels. Did you actually achieve the correct systems that you trained in? And did you have the right balance? Okay. Well, gosh, not anything in anaerobic capacity, a little bit more in active recovery. Was that the way we wanted the workout to work for that athlete for that day? If so, then we're good. If not, then we can change some things. Okay, so that's a key thing. All right, let me give you another little case study here. This is a great case study that's using the Performance Manager as well. And this is George Hincapie. And George, I've known George since, gosh, he was 16 years old, just a punk, racing in the Cat 2 races. And, we raced together for many, many years. And I guess it was 2012, we did or this was 2011, we did a camp with George in Greenville, South Carolina. And he said, hey, man, look at all my data and check it out. And I said, sure, let's look at it and do a little case study on it. So what was interesting, we found a bunch of things here. Well, George had a good spring, or had a good winter of training, but unfortunately he peaked too early. So he peaked 3 weeks too early before his biggest races of the year. So he was flying in March, early March, when he really wanted to do well in late March, early April. So that was a big thing there that we needed to, change for the following year is, hey, look, here's this early peak that happened here, and ultimately it wasn't in the right time. So even guys like him with 17 years of experience and more can't get their peaks perfectly right. Now, he comes down, and their chronic training load comes down. He's starting to get fresher. He goes back into training hard again. Then he recovers just a little bit, goes to Tour California. Has a nice little peak right there in the Tour California. He's riding in a great support role that year. Big part of it, was pushing that way. Then he's kind of maintaining his fitness here, doing some races here and there. Does a nice stage race, gets a couple of bests right here, then tapers and goes to the Tour de France. All right, so this is the place where he really wanted to ride well. Has a nice, decent peak here in the Tour de France when he wanted to do well. Lots of chronic training load, up to 160 TSS per day. After the tour, recover, and then go to Tour of Colorado. All right, so fortunately for him, he absorbed that Tour de France training load just like he does every year. Gets stronger from it. Been doing it for so many years in a row. Makes a huge difference. And he won a stage. He won the Aspen stage that year in the Tour of Colorado. So makes a huge difference there when you can take the training load, absorb it, and make it all happen and work for you. Now, let's pick on George a little bit more here, just to show you a little bit deeper about the power data and what this stuff means. This is his Paris-Roubaix race in 2011. This is an incredible race, and this was one thing that was very interesting here is look at how consistent his power is for the entire 6 hours and 17 minutes. Okay, So there isn't a time here, really, where he's kind of off the gas. I mean, maybe a little bit here for about 30 minutes. It was pretty easy. The rest of the time, he's on the gas. This line right here is at 360 watts. So you can see all this time way up in the 400 range. There really just isn't a lot of resting in this race. It really isn't a lot of resting. It's incredible, incredible feat of endurance. 323 watts average for 6 hours. Okay, so just remind yourself of that when you do 323 watts for 3 minutes and you're like, oh my God, I can't go any harder. And he did it for 6 hours. That is absolutely amazing. Amazing, amazing effort. Really incredible. All right. So that comes to our time here. It gives us a little bit of time for questions. If you have any questions, I know that some of them are going to get answered for over the while we're going along here. If you have any questions, you can answer them here or shoot them to me in my question box here, and I'll answer them. I got a couple in here that makes a few good things here. All right. What wattage increases are reasonable based on consistent weekly hours over a season? 20, 30 watts, 50 watts. An athlete had been training consistently over 5 years. This is it is tough to say. You have to definitely look at the training and the history to understand where you are. I like to say that if I can get 10% every year, that makes a huge difference. Like if you train and push yourself 10% more year over year is possible to a certain point. Eventually, you're going to reach a ceiling, and that's going to be where you are. Think of your functional threshold power as a table, and that table when you start out is pretty low to the ground, and then as you get a little bit fitter, the legs of the table grow, the tabletop gets a little taller, and then it gets a little taller, and it gets a little taller, and eventually that tabletop gets all the way to the ceiling in the inside the house, inside the room, right? And there's no place else for it to grow, right? So that's it. That's your genetic limiter when you get to that ceiling. That is what it is. It's a challenge, but at the same time, it's very difficult to get to that place because it just takes years and years and years of training in order to get there. All right. Let's see. Do we have any other any questions here? All right. This is a great one here. I should reiterate. Are the power profiles based on riding indoor, outdoor, or mix of riding? The power profiles are best utilized if you do your data outside. Okay, if you test yourself outside, you're going to get your best test, especially your 5-second, your 1 minute. That's when you're going to get your best test. And then, if you're going to use the 5-minute and 20-minute or 60-minute, those can be done indoors, but it'd really be better if you do them outdoors. I've got a lot of athletes who train in very busy areas, and it's a challenge for them to find a 20-minute section of road without stoplights or stop signs. And a lot of times we'll test those riders indoors, and especially because sometimes they do a lot of training indoors themselves. So it makes a big difference there for all of us to do that. So just be consistent with your testing so that your testing is the same over and over, and you should be good. All right. Great questions here. Is WKO going to be available for Mac? Yes, it is. It is going to be available for Mac. We will have it for Mac, so I hope that everybody enjoys that. And will we send the link out for the recorded webinar? Yes, we'll send the link to the recorded version later tonight. So we've got that coming for you. It is going to be easy to understand and download, so you can use it for later. All right. Well, I think that that's about it for tonight. One thing that I'd like to talk a little bit about is, we've got the Power Camp contests, And we have, if you surf over to Facebook and look at the Power Tap Facebook page, then you will see that you can join and win a spot to our Blue Ridge Power Plus Cycling Camp in beautiful Bedford, Virginia, where the Peaks Coaching Group World Headquarters is, April 13th through the 18th. Myself, Dr. Andy Coggin, the winningest professional ever in the United States. Scott Moniger is going to be joining us as well. He's one of our Peaks coaches. And we've got an incredible, incredible training camp in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. So that's something that you just got to do. Go over to the Facebook page, join and sign up for that camp right there on the Facebook page. That's a perfect place for it, and it'll allow you to really get involved here, and hope that that you'll be the winner. So join us. We'd love to have you. All right, thanks a lot again so much for being a part of this great webinar. And we've got more webinars to come, more advanced ones down the road, so look for those. And I hope you make it a great evening. Thanks a lot. Good night.